Greetings from Gotham, everyone. My name is Dominic, and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I've prepared a quick list video for all of you. I'm going to be looking at where to start Batman. Have you been wanting to read Batman comics, but you're really not sure where to begin? Well, honestly, I've made a couple lists like this in the past. I thought this time I would freshen the list up a little bit and really only pick more modern titles. I'm not going too far into the golden, silver, bronze age. No, I'm taking pretty contemporary choices and giving you more of a fresh list. These might not all be instant classics, but I think that they would be all very fun places to start reading Batman. Before we jump in though, I do want to shout out the channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, maybe even some you see in this list, please check out their website. You can find a link for it in this video's description. If you see something you like, you can even use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to receive $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's probably the best way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's Batman list. First up, we have Batman the Knight by Chip Zdarsky and Carmine di Giandomenico. Frankly, this is a very contemporary Batman pick, but I think it's a great way to start reading Batman comics. It was just released in the last year or two at the time of this recording, but it basically showcases the period in Bruce Wayne or Batman's life between his early childhood and essentially early adulthood, right before he takes on the cape and cowl. This is really Batman's adolescence, where he travels the world and tries to gain the skill set he needs to one day wage his war on crime. I also think it's just generally a fantastic character study for this character of Batman or Bruce Wayne. I really love what Chip Zdarsky did here. He really filled in the missing puzzle piece that a lot of people probably clamor for in many ways, which is what happened to Batman after that childhood trauma, but before he really became Batman proper. And of course, we've had great sequences or flashbacks that showcase maybe parts of this era, but to my knowledge, we haven't had a kind of devoted miniseries or graphic novel that studied this time in particular. I really feel like this work fits a need that's been here for Batman, and honestly, I think it was so well executed. I absolutely loved my time with this book. The art from Giandomenico is absolutely stellar as well. It's really lush and beautiful. I also love just the fact that we're globetrotting. We have so many exotic locales that in many ways it almost feels like a Bond movie. You know, we're going to this different kind of lush country. We're seeing the seedy underbelly here, the city over here, what have you. We get so much of a kind of explorative feel to it that I just dig it. I also love that this is Batman. This is Bruce Wayne, before Batman, but it still feels like him. The essence of this character is absolutely at the forefront, but he is more immature, he's younger, he's more brash, maybe reckless, kind of unhoned, and I love that as well. I think it's really authentic to the character, but still feels very fresh. I think that this would be a really fun ground floor way to experience the character of Batman for the first time, and it's before he even really gets that cowl. Please don't miss out on Batman the Knight. Next up on this list, and again, this is in no particular order, we're going to be doing Batman Year One by Frank Miller. This in many ways is my definitive example and recommendation I give just about anyone when they say they want to read Batman. This is kind of the titular graphic novel in my opinion, and it gives us the origin story of Batman himself, along with characters like Jim Gordon, the soon-to-be commissioner of the Gotham Central Police Department. I think that this is just a really fun, gritty crime noir that just also happens to be about a superhero. The art is absolutely fantastic, and this is easily a classic Batman work. This might be the oldest comic that's going to be present on this list, but I frankly couldn't do a Batman Where to Start list without mentioning Batman Year One. This is my favorite place to start. I am a bit biased, but I just have to throw that out there. I know for me as well, this really withheld the test of time. I just think that this is always going to be a classic and iconic Batman work. I also think it really honors kind of the origin of this character in many ways. There's a couple homages to maybe the early Golden Age Detective Comics issue that first premiered Batman. That's actually not in this list. Like I said, I'm going a little bit more contemporary for this listing. And no, this isn't like an order in which to read these early Batman stories. This is just a scattershot of, hey, I think this is a great place to just jump in on this character character. But this is nice because it does have the real origin of Batman. It gives us kind of like the trauma that first caused it when he first decides to be Batman and how that looks in kind of a city, urban atmosphere. I love Miller's characterization of Batman, Bruce Wayne. I think it's gritty. I think it's really authentic in many ways. This has just kind of a seedy, like I said, urban, gritty, noir aspect to it. I love it. I think that this is just such a good book. This is one I actually need to reread sometime soon. It's been too long since I've been able to read Batman Year One, and like I said, I think I'm just due. Hey, if you're enjoying this video too and you've yet to subscribe to the channel, I just want to invite you to do so. I'm always doing list videos like this, comic book reviews, unboxings, and so much more. Thank you for considering. Now on with today's Batman video. Next up on my Where to Start Batman list, we're going to be checking out Batman Earth 1 Volume 1 by Geoff Johns. This is in the Earth 1 universe, which is part of the DC multiverse. It's not in your mainstream continuity. This Earth 1 kind of era, a couple superhero titles got releases in this banner, but essentially it's its own kind of separate universe. You don't need any previous continuity. It does remix a bit of the standard conventional origins or kind of early happenings for these characters, but it's a great way to experience the character without needing backstory and to read a kind of complete work. These weren't released as individual issues. No, these were actually developed and released as graphic novels themselves. Batman received 3 volumes in this line at the time of the recording, and they're all terrific. I've reviewed them all on the channel, but to me, this is one of the best. This gives us the Batman origin story. It feels fresh. It feels very modern. The art from Gary Frank, as always, an absolute standout. I think that this is just such a great Batman work. Superficially, one of my favorite things about it too is it gives us the eyes under the cowl, so when you're looking at Batman, you can look right into Bruce Wayne's eyes. This was such a small detail that I think left such a huge impact. It's one of my biggest takeaways about the Earth 1 Batman stories, but another is just how accessible it is. I think it's kind of an analog to something like the Marvel Ultimate Universe, where again, it's kind of a contemporizing of the origin story and early stories in these superhero mythoses. Takes place outside of their mainstream continuity, and it's just kind of easy to pick up. I do think that the approach of making them graphic novel releases as well is particularly novel. They feel standalone. They feel fully baked, beginning, middle, and end. You get a complete story even within this Volume 1. But we do have subsequent stories in this line, like I said, a Volume 2 and a Volume 3 that continue some of the larger dangling plot threads. But again, they all feel pretty conclusive and definitive, and it's just really well done. Geoff Johns is just full strength here. Really, really a good place to start reading this character, especially if you want low commitments for future Batman readings. This is a great kind of one and done series. Next on my list is actually a big collection here. This is the Batman by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale Omnibus. This includes stories like Batman Haunted Night, which collects these kind of Halloween one-shot issues. We have Batman The Long Halloween, its sequel, Batman Dark Victory, and even Catwoman When in Rome. These all take place kind of in their own shared universe version of the DC universe. Whether or not these are fully canon or not, who knows. But these are some of the most definitive Batman stories out there, particularly The Long Halloween. For me, this is a really great story in particular that just showcases Batman's detective skills. The kind of Dark Knight detective aspects of Batman are on full display here. These are all also set in the early years of Batman's crime-fighting career. The Long Halloween itself is actually before the introduction of Dick Grayson's Robin. He is actually introduced in its direct sequel, Dark Victory. Everything that I mentioned here is included in this omnibus edition in a beautiful oversized hardcover format. Essentially, these stories are really murder mystery whodunit with Batman trying to capture serial killers that strike multiple times. It's a great way that also showcases a lot of Batman's allies and, of course, his rogues gallery of villains. The art from the late, great Tim Sale as well is an absolute standout. It's stylized, but it is beautiful. I love the way he depicts Gotham and all of its inhabitants, particularly the villains. They've never looked more interesting, captivating, colorful, perhaps than in the pages of things like The Long Halloween. This is a great place for new readers to start because you not only get to read classic Batman works, but you get to see Batman, again, earlier stages of his career and showcasing so many quintessential elements of what make a great Batman story. We've got action, we've got suspense, we've got kind of a cerebral psychological thriller aspect, we have detective work, and so much more. Don't miss out on Batman by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale, and in particular, don't miss out on Batman The Long Halloween. Again, a fantastic place to start reading Batman comics. You don't want to miss it. Next on this list, I actually debated about including, but I ended up just pulling the trigger here, Batman Hush by Jeph Loeb and Jim Lee. For longer time fans of the channel, you'll know that this is actually my favorite example of comic book art ever. I'm a huge fan of Jim Lee. He is my #1 comic book artist, and I've never seen his work look more polished or beautiful than in the pages of Batman Hush. I don't know what it is, but all the character models are just absolutely vibrant and beautiful. They jump right off the page. Like the previous entry, the Jeph Loeb Tim Sale Batman work like Long Halloween, this returns our writer Jeph Loeb, this time again swapping Jim Lee for Tim Sale there. But we have another great kind of detective whodunit storyline, this time really hitting closer to home with Bruce Wayne. This is later in the crime fighter's career, taking place during kind of the main continuity of Batman's stories. There are a lot of really important character ramifications in this run as well. We do, like in Long Halloween, have a showcasing of a lot of the supporting characters and the big cast of villains. Beautiful artwork displayed throughout. I do think that it would benefit you to have more of Batman's history for reading a book like this, but I still think it's a good place to include for where to start, because there's some people that are only going to see these collected editions on a shelf and think, hey, is this the day I read a Batman book? And I think you could do a lot worse than Batman Hush. Like I said, it's a great way to get exposure for not only Batman's kind of main allies, but also to see a bunch of his main villains on full display. I love all the appearances we have throughout this book. Like I said, it's a great way to see some incredible comic book art as well, some really proficient writing, and I think that this would be a really good gateway into this character. In fact, I've heard of people that this is one of the first Batman works they've read, and I haven't heard a lot of regrets. I would probably prefer something like Long Halloween to this, but I do think that this is another really valid option, particularly if this art style clicks a little bit more for you. It's a really fantastic story. For me, it's a modern classic. I absolutely love Batman Hush. In my mind, a pretty solid start to reading Batman. Next up on this list, I couldn't do this video without mentioning Batman by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. This is the Omnibus edition, an oversized hardcover, of course. This is a volume 1 of a 2-volume set that includes the entirety of these creators' run on Batman. For those that don't know, this is the start of the New 52 era at DC Comics, meaning it comes after the event Flashpoint that kind of resets some of the DC continuity. Why I bring that up, why it's pertinent and matters to this video, is because I think that makes this a perfect place to start reading Batman. It begins with an issue #1, and you really don't need to know anything about Batman to enjoy it. They make it intentionally accessible to newer batches of readers and audiences. Any characters or kind of themes or ideas that you need are all filled in for you, and you're treated to some really fantastic modern Batman storytelling. This is also my favorite Batman comic book run of all time that I've had the pleasure of reading. We kick off with The Court of Owls, which may or may not be a title you've heard of, but it introduces a cabal of kind of clandestine, secret meters of kind of Gotham's 1% elite that meet behind the scenes and kind of orchestrate the future of Gotham City. Batman, who really feels like he owns the night, owns this city, doesn't believe they even exist, and yet that's who he's in direct confrontation with throughout that early story arc. From there, we go to Batman Death of the Family, which is just a frightening and amazing Joker story, and the run just goes from there on. I do think that this is just an absolutely incredible place to start reading Batman. Like I said, because it's intentionally designed to be accessible, I think it's a great recommendation. I recommend it as well because, again, it's my favorite Batman run. It's a little bit darker, broodier. The artwork from Capullo is haunting and gripping. I mean, just look at the pages here. It's absolutely captivating. It has a kind of noir aspect to it. Snyder's writing is just flawless for me. It's beautiful. It's haunting. They make Gotham its own individual entity in many ways. It feels like its own character that lives and breathes and has a unique feel to it, and I just think that this is just amazing, immersive Batman storytelling at its finest. A great place to start reading Batman, and a must-read for all Batman fans, at least in my mind. Next on our list today, we have Batman by Tom King. And to showcase that, I'm going to be looking at the Batman Rebirth Deluxe Edition, Book 1. This is a volume 1 of a 6-volume set. Most of these, I believe, are out of print, but I'm sure these will receive a reprint in the future. Maybe not in this edition, but certainly this run. This takes place after the events of the New 52 run under Scott Snyder, but it basically occurs during this Rebirth era for DC Comics, which, like the New 52, was kind of a relaunching. This restored a lot of the previous continuity, but again, it started with a new issue 1, and it was intentionally designed again to be accessible to a new wave of readers. I think that this would really be a good place for new readers to start because it just gives you another option for a creator run on the book. You feel like you have a long ongoing series here that you can really get in on the ground floor of. This run spanned a while as well. I think it was more polarizing than the Snyder run in many ways, but I think it's another fantastic run. I had the pleasure of reading this comic book run as well, and I think it's a great place to start reading Batman. I think unlike writers like Grant Morrison, who also had a fantastic run on Batman, this run relies less on Batman history, and I just feel like is more palatable to someone who just wants to check out this character. This run is also noteworthy for really amping up the romance between Batman and Catwoman. I've been a fan of that romance angle for some time. There's certainly been previous stories and runs that kind of address it, but it really comes into full fruition here during the Tom King era. As a sappy kind of romance lover, I did love this aspect of this run as well. I think for someone who really wants to get into that side of Batman as well, this is a really great place to jump into that. Really love the run too. I thought Tom King did a lot of interesting takes with Batman, took a lot of really interesting angles on storytelling, and really had some lasting ramifications for this whole universe. And yet, I just think it was so easy to jump into this run from the very beginning. I had to include it on the where to start list. Like I said, I think it's great for new readers, and also to start at a creator run at its beginning, it's just not a bad place to begin. I wanted to showcase graphic novels and kind of standalone stories, but also runs that I think are great for new readers, and this is definitely one of them by Tom King. And finally on my list today, we have Batman, Their Dark Designs by James Tynion IV. This is another start to a creator run on Batman. This takes place after the Tom King era. You might be asking, how can you recommend to start with all of these different runs that go after each other? Because honestly, they start a whole new thing. Every time we have a new creator jumping on a book, for the most part, you can bet it's a fairly decent place to start reading that character. Like I mentioned in the previous entry, I wanted this list to not only be reflective of a couple of smaller standalone stories you can start reading Batman with, but also larger comic book runs that you can really jump into kind of the meat of Batman's storytelling and follow for a good handful of issues. So I wanted to balance the list like that, and again, favoring kind of more contemporary choices. So for that, I had to choose this James Tynion run. He did also write on Detective Comics once upon a time. I think that run is overall a bit stronger, but this proper Batman run is still a ton of fun, and it had a bunch of really big events like Joker War and Fear State. But for me, you all start right here at Batman, Their Dark Designs. We have Batman battling some of the world's deadliest assassins. We have a conspiracy that spanned years and years in the making, some fantastic flashback sequences, frame narratives, betrayal, love, hope, general villainy. It just has it all here. I think it's a really stunning story. I think the art throughout it by Gilliam March is just some of the most outstanding Batman work I've ever seen. The illustrations are beautiful, character models are all super dialed in, and this is just a really fantastic kind of mystery. There's so many layers here that I just really, really loved. Yes, the Joker War is fun, Fear State's fun, the rest of this run is really great, but it's this Their Dark Designs that's really one of my favorite Batman stories I've read in the modern era, and I think it's a good onboarding book for a lot of people that are looking to jump into a run and read a modern Batman story without needing to know a ton of history. I really think it's great. I think James Tynion is a really wonderful writer, and I think that his time here, though maybe not as strong as his time on Detective Comics, is still absolutely worth reading and a fun place to start reading Batman. Okay, and I think that's really going to wrap up my where to start Batman list today. I've done a couple of these, like I've said, where to start reading Batman videos or kind of best of Batman, Batman greatest hits. But for this time, I wanted to again go back to, for that new reader or prospective reader that just wants to break into Batman comics, what are some really solid books you can read? I tried to just do contemporary listings here. Like I said, the oldest book I have on my list is Batman Year One, and even that to its next book is a pretty big gap. I try to pick intentionally more modern books books. I tried to balance, again, the kind of standalone graphic novel feel with kind of ongoing or longer running character runs on Batman that I still just think are great places to start getting into the character. But I'd love to know your picks. There's so many incredible Batman stories. I think every story is maybe someone's first Batman story. Maybe share in the comments, what were your first Batman books you remember reading? What are some you would definitely recommend? What did I miss? What do you maybe disagree with? Definitely let me know in the comments. I had so much fun making this. I hope that there are more Batman fans after this video than before you checked it out. But thank you so much for stopping by. And until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, comment, and maybe check out one of my other videos on your way out. Thanks, and have a good one.